Imagine being tasked with defeating the demons that roam your land, all whilst upholding your duties as the commander of your squadron and princess of the kingdom. But having been captured, you brace yourself to be tortured, but it seems the demons have quite a few peculiar tactics to squeeze intel out of you. Our anime opens in the desert, where our MC Princess Hime, the leader of the Knight's 3rd Army Squadron, is seen taking a break from their travel. One of her knights reports that it'll take another day for travel until they reach the monster they need to hunt, but out of nowhere the creature they've been searching for appears before them. As the horned giant clobbers the surrounding knights, Hime springs into action. Relieved the creature has come to them, with the giant's club destroying and terrorizing the knights. They all seem to despair the creature before them, but Hime draws her blade, heroically firing off some aerial slashes the land directly on the creature. Within mere moments, Hime single-handedly dispatched the creature before them, something that makes her men cheer out of joy, prompting Hime to join in as she raises her holy blade, Excalibur. As several years pass by, we cut to a scary-looking castle where we discover that Hime has been locked up alongside her sword, seemingly losing all hope. Hime's sentient blade, X, recounts that the Imperial Army had gone to war with the Hell Horde, and with some unfortunate events unfolding, Hime was ultimately captured, but she seems to be resilient even in her current situation. At that moment, several demons begin marching towards Hime's cell, and with a single glance, Hime flinches, fearing what may happen to her. Entering the cell, Tortura, the Hell Horde's Grand Inquisitor, once again asks Hime to spill any secrets the Royal Empire may be keeping. But X speaks up, reminding Torture that Hime would never betray her kingdom. Having no other choice, Torture says she'll have to torture Hime to make her break, prompting Dharma to show off a horrifying-looking metal casket. X cries that human laws prevent prisoners from being tortured, but Torture says demon laws are different, something Hime had anticipated as she declares she'll stay strong till the very end. Intrigued, Torture starts by opening up the iron casket, only to show off a delectable-looking piece of toast. Seeing Dharma setting up a table to plate the toast, X cries that such a tactic would never fool a princess, but Hime seems completely hypnotized by the toast. Although Hime snaps out of her daze, she is seen holding herself back, but Torture chooses to fan the sweet scent of the toast to further entice Hime. Instantly, Hime pictures herself in a field, all while she waits for some buttery toast to bake. Luckily, X once again snaps Hime out of her daze, but when Torture splits the toast in half, the sheer crispy texture of the bread ensnares Hime. Hime begins picturing a world where she has unlimited bread to devour, even temporarily ascending her human form, but is brought to reality as she cries that a commander like herself will never succumb to such bold torture. Following up, Torture unveils a bowl with leftover beef stew, tearing off a piece of the toast only to use it to clean off the remainder of the stew. Seeing the stew and toast combination, Hime helplessly watches as Torture devours the meal before her, ultimately making Hime shiver and quake as she finally agrees to talk. Hime is seen giving out information on the Imperial Army's weak point, only to desperately ask for some toast, but Torture glares at her, reminding Hime that she should know her place. Surprisingly, Torture unveils a whole set of baked goods, throwing a mini toast party for Hime, all whilst X gets confused at what they're witnessing. Later that night, we see Torture reporting her findings to a mysterious figure, agreeing to keep Hime captured and squeeze more information out of her. Torture apologizes to Hime as she'll need to be tortured every day moving forward, only to cut to the next day where Torture prepares her torture, but X declares that Hime won't be so easy to break this time as she isn't hungry unlike yesterday. Upon unveiling a takoyaki stand, Hime is seen admiring the variation of toppings presented, but X reminds Hime to keep her cool. Hime admits that such lowly foods shouldn't tempt her, but Hime remembers the times when her kingdom would hold festivals and she would have to watch her citizens dine on takoyaki while she watched from afar, something that makes Hime cry. Feeling sympathetic, Torture offers Hime a takoyaki ball to taste, something Hime immediately scoffs down only to shriek as it burns her mouth. Hime is dazzled by the gooey exterior and plump interior of the ball, a moment Heim wants to experience again as she ultimately confesses to whatever torture asks of her. Having told the demons where the Imperial Army hid their ultimate weapon, Heim shows off her own takoyaki creation, something that doesn't amuse X. That night, Torture is seen making her report to Kanaj, an attendant of the Hell Lord, surprised to hear that the Hell Lord Mao refuses to toy with the ultimate weapon the Imperial Army hid away. Seeing as the information she obtained is useless, we cut to midnight the next day, where Heim accuses Torture of trying to deprive her of sleep, but Heim declares she has stayed up many nights fighting until dawn. Switching things up, Torture once again unveils a shiny new food item that blinds Heim, an item Heim recognizes as ramen. Cursing at her own stomach for craving such a glistening meal, X tries warning Heim against such a thing, but Heim is fixated at the creamy broth, apologizing to X as she can't help it. To make things worse, Torture begins to sip on the thick broth, something that makes Heim beg for her own portion, and when Torture begins slurping down the noodles, Heim begins to scream and writhe in pain. On the brink of death, Heim says she can still hold out, but upon seeing Torture preparing some rice, chili paste, garlic and nori wrap to complement the ramen, Heim begins to stutter over her own words, finally giving in. Given her own bowl of ramen, Heim nonchalantly savors the late-night snack, cutting over to Torture, who reports her findings. Out of nowhere, two other demons offer to torture Heim tomorrow, all whilst Heim sleeps, soundly dreaming of all the foods she has eaten whilst locked up. The next day, we see Torture introduce Lutorment Yuki and Inky. People Torture warns Heim not to underestimate. Getting to work, Yuki and Inky get tucked into some super jump brawlers, a video game that intrigues Heim, but X cries that such a tactic is useless against the princess. Heim sadly begins to crack, remembering that she had a strict childhood filled with training and the only friend she had was X. Inky asks if Heim would like to play with them, but Heim hesitates since she doesn't know how to play. But when Torture offers to join as well, Heim gladly sits down to play as 4 players. Entranced by the fun, we see our girls immersed in the game, where Yuki's character faces off against Heim, whilst Inky takes on Torture. Seeing as Heim had dominated Yuki, Torture and Inky team up against Heim. But even with her back against the wall, Heim decimates the others, sweeping up the lobby. As the demon girls shower Heim with praise, Heim ultimately reveals that security in the Western Gate is weak on Wednesday, but before Yuki and Inky leave, they reassure Heim they'll be back to play more. With Heim excited to make new friends, we cut over to Mao, who learns of the Imperial Army's weakness on Wednesday, believing it to be due to cram school, but following Torture, we see her enjoying a bubble bath whilst planning her next torture. Torture wonders where her fellow demon that was sent west is, cutting over to the next day, where Beastmaster Kral has appeared to enact her torture. X states that Heim once slaughtered a horde of frenzied beasts, but Kral uses a surprise attack, calling for an adorable polar cub to appear. Heim immediately yearns to play with it, all whilst it flounders around playing with a ball. Seeing Heim refuse to give in, Kral chooses to take the ball away from the cub, declaring that Heim can rectify things if she confesses, something that pisses Heim off. Before Heim can scold Kral for doing something so horrible, she notices Kral squirming, realizing that Kral feels terrible for stealing the cub's ball away. Within a few minutes, Kral ends up giving the ball back, immediately apologizing to the cub as she cuddles and promises to not hurt it again. Surprisingly, Heim is touched by such honesty from Kral, ultimately spilling more secrets as she finally gets to adore the furry cub. As both girls cuddle with the cub, we hear that Kral's mission up west prior was demolition work, and it seems Kral isn't a bad person after all. In the coming day, Torture says they'll need to relocate for their next torture, asking Heim to put on some earmuffs and a blindfold only to be escorted into a hot spring. At first, Heim is weirded out, but she suddenly sees a massive creature approaching her, only for the lady to introduce herself as Giant, a combat soldier. Heim is amazed at Giant's massive stature, but X demands to know what type of torture Giant has in store, declaring that Heim would never succumb to anything since Heim is used to enduring all sorts of harsh conditions during her battles. Sadly, Heim begins to melt into the hot, steamy hot spring, but she reassures X that she can still keep her cool as she was never spoiled as a child. Shocked, Jikan offers to pamper and hug Hime, immediately pulling her in and embracing her, something that confuses Hime. Taking in the moment, Hime begins picturing a carefree childhood, growing up with Giant as her mother, convincing her to spill the beans, only to decompress in a massage chair alongside the others. Torture is seen receiving another order to gather more intel, suddenly getting an idea as she turns to face a vending machine that sells snacks, all returning home only to offer up some chocolate-filled cookies to the princess for her collaboration. X says Hime was given various luxurious desserts growing up, plus Hime was always guarded by Jamochi, her honored knight, so such a thing wouldn't faze Hime. But Hime reveals that Jamochi secretly bought her similar snacks as a present for her hard work. Hime says the gorilla cookies were an expensive snack, and with the same amount of money, she could buy multiple other cheaper snacks, so Torture's tactics won't work on her. Slowly, Torture unboxes the snacks and begins nomming on them one at a time, something that confuses Hime, but Hime suddenly realizes Torture isn't appreciating the cute images on the cookie. Hime demands Torture show some love to the images on the cookies, but upon seeing Torture continue to emotionlessly devour the cookies, Hime begins to despair, refusing to allow Torture to mock the sanctity of the gorilla cookies. Giving Torture what she needs, Torture learns that the queen's shoe size is 23 centimeters, all whilst Hime devours the cookies. But outside the demon castle, we see a mysterious knight appear, declaring they'll rescue the princess. Back in the castle, Yuki and Inky ask Hime if she wants to go with them to a theme park tomorrow. But when Torture hears of the offer, she immediately forbids Hime from leaving her cell. Torture realizes she can turn this opportunity into a torture, declaring that if Hime confesses another secret, she'll be allowed to go. But Hime chooses to remain silent. With an hour passing, Torture turns up the heat by revealing that the theme park will open soon, and if Hime confesses, Torture will give her some proper clothes and teleport her there. X warns Hime that the theme park may all be a lie, reminding Hime of the time one of her most trusted friends had tried to betray her, ultimately forcing Hime to put down her own ally. Torture is impressed Hime didn't crack this time, but when Hime receives photos of Yuki and Inky waiting outside of the theme park for her, Hime pulls a 180 and begs to go. Giving a quick confession, Hime is teleported to the theme park in a cute outfit, only to begin enjoying her time with her new friends, completely indulging in the various rides and food, only to end the day off with a fireworks show. That night, Torture reports that the king prefers the sea over land, only for Torture to hear that Mao's own daughter will be joining in on the torture session tomorrow. Outside the castle, we see the mysterious knight begin to chant something. But as we cut to the next day, we see Torture enter Hime's cell only to immediately kneel down, stepping into the cell as well as Mao Chan, the Demon King's only daughter, someone Hime can't help but adore. X reminds Hime that the daughter of the most despicable being to exist is in front of her, but Mao corrects X, declaring that she feels so much pressure as she wants to make her dad proud. Seeing Mao tear up, Hime cheers Mao on, only for Mao to start her torture. Mao first takes out some bubble wrap, beginning to pop them as she asks if Hime is jealous, but Hime knows such a tactic would never work. Before Mao can continue the torture, she realizes she popped all her bubble wrap, beginning to cry once more, something that forces Hime to talk as she doesn't want to see Mao sad. Torture is amazed Mao got the Imperial Army's secret code from Hime, and seeing as Mao is now free to play with Hime nonchalantly breaks free from her binds only to begin playing tag with Mao. Following Mao, he can't help but feel proud of Mao for completing her first torture, choosing to frame the secret code instead of relaying it to his minions. Back with the mysterious knight, we see that their spell is forming a veil over the demon castle. But before we see the result, we cut back to Torture, who has prepared some soup dumplings for Hime. X knows that Chinese food is Hime's weakness, but surprisingly Hime could care less, reminiscing on the times when Jamochi would treat Hime to some Chinese food after her lessons. Hime said she always hated the soup dumplings as it burns her mouth, but Torture scolds Hime for not eating the soup dumplings correctly. Torture reveals that Hime must puncture the dumpling's skin and slurp up the piping hot broth first, surprising Hime. To top things off, Torture shows off the aromatic savory dumpling that Hime can have if she confesses, something that makes Hime blab about the Imperial Army guards switching shifts every Sunday, resulting in a weaker security during that time. As Hime scoops up a mouth full of dumplings, Kanaj is seen telling Mao about the kingdom's weakness on Sunday, but Mao says he can't capitalize since he's busy on Sundays. Having finished their incantation, we see the mysterious knight sneaking into Hime's cell, having put all the guards in the demon castle to sleep, only to introduce themselves as Louch Britain, White Knight of the Imperial First Legion. Apparently, Hime had always put up a strong front when it came to discussing men she was interested in, but in secret she dreamt of the day her Prince Charming would come and rescue her. In the present, Hime gleefully wonders if her dreams are finally coming true, slowly watching as Louch unmasks himself, but upon seeing an older-looking man, Hime snaps back to reality. Hime reveals she can free herself from her binds, asking Louch what his plan to escape is, only to hear that Louch's sleep spell will run out soon, so they should use a return spell to head home. Louch warns Hime that they'll need to be quite close for the spell to work, cutting to a few seconds later where they're holding each other tight, only for Louch to begin chanting his spell. Hime slowly begins getting flustered, seeing as Louch is very close to her. But as Louch begins to focus harder and harder on the spell, his grasp on Hime's waist grows tighter. Refusing to be taken advantage of, Hime breaks free and cuts down Louch, all whilst Louch's spell teleports himself away. The next day, things return to normal, but Mao wonders why Torture hasn't given him any more valuable information, requesting to speak with her personally. As Torture kneels before the Demon King, she hears Mao mocking the information she gave him, and to make things worse, Mao asks Torture to show him the torture methods she's been using. Seeing as her life is on the line, Torture gets serious, returning with her iron casket, but Kanaj declares that the Demon King's mental resilience stands above all beings. Torture chooses to slowly unveil her torture, something that intrigues everyone as she shows off a chill beer. Mao reminds Torture that he enjoys beverages with his wife every day. Plus, he has tasted all types of fine beverages in his lifetime. Therefore, a measly can beer won't do anything. Smirking, Torture cracks open a cold one, something that piques Mao's interest as he watches Torture elegantly pour the beer from a height into a glass. Mao knows that pouring from so high up will create foam, but Torture had planned such a thing, waiting for the foam to subside only to fill the remainder of the glass. Mao can't help but gulp at the delectable beverage, an item that tempts Mao with its fluffy top and golden elixir base. Out of nowhere, Mao's distress begins to shake the room he's in, something that shocks Kanaj as the hero for the Imperial Army didn't faze Mao one bit. But seeing the crispy drink before him, Mao comedically confesses that his weakness is light magic. Finally given the beverage, Mao gulps down the sweet nectar with one mouthful, suddenly engulfed in happiness as he temporarily dissipates from his throne. Succeeding in keeping her job, Torture celebrates with a pint of her own, only to visit Hime the next day, where she tells Hime their torture will be a little different. X immediately declares Hime will confess, surprising Hime as X has given up on Hime. But surprisingly, Torture calls for Gilga, the weaponsmith, to appear. Gilga immediately gets to work inspecting X's build, feeling bad since a sacred blade had been left in the ground for ages. So Torture says X will be the one to be tortured today. X cries that a prestigious blade like itself has only ever serviced the royal family and nobles, so will never crack under any torture. But when Gilga begins derusting X's exterior, X begins to celebrate. Snapping out of its daze, X says it was only letting out a battle cry. But when Gilga begins grinding down X's edges for a sharper finish, X declares it can feel itself returning to its former glory. Not even a few minutes later, Gilga suddenly stops her service, unmasking herself only to offer to finish off the cleaning and polishing service if X confesses, exciting X as they willingly share some secrets. Within a few minutes, X proudly shows off their glittery and polished form, all whilst Torture voices her amazement upon hearing the Demon Sword Marasa and Fire Sword Amon are lovers. That night, as Heim sleeps, X wakes her up to apologize for breaking so easily, both agreeing to do better in the future. The next day, Kral returns to torture Heim, but Heim is more curious to see how the polar cub is doing. Kral takes the chance to invite Heim to visit her home and meet the other animals she has. But torture reminds Kral to get serious, prompting Kral to call for a terrifying mad wolf to enter the cell. X immediately warns Heim to stay on high alert. But although Heim says she has slain wolves in the past, she has never faced a mad wolf before. With Kral starting the torture, she strangely calls for the mad wolf to attack with its paw, but strangely Kral ends up snuggling with its massive paw. Kral adds that a mad wolf's paw smells divine, but Heim couldn't care less, even offering to smell the wolf's paw, but to Heim there is nothing unique about it. Kral begins to grow annoyed, even telling Heim about how torture keeps a picture of her niece on her phone, in order to convince Heim to give the paw another sniff. Hesitant at first, Heim gives in, suddenly realizing that the paw indeed does give off a popcorn scent, plus the wolf's furry paw makes a great snuggle tool. With Kral glad to have another sister appreciate the paw hype, Kral asks if the girls would like to visit her home, and seeing as there are bunnies, torture gladly allows it. With the girls spending their day with the various animals Kral has tamed, we cut to several days later where Mau Mau is back, asking for Heim to capture her enjoying her time in the park as a form of torture. With Heim following and watching Mau Mau have a blast, X fears that Heim will give in and join Mau Mau. But Heim says she never liked playing in the park as royalty, is forbidden from playing in the park with other kids. Seeing Heim standing triumphantly, X praises Heim for remaining resolute. But the more Heim thinks about her past, the more she yearns to live out what she couldn't as a child. As Mau Mau runs and hugs Heim, she begs Heim to play with her, something that Heim can't refuse as she confesses some intel only to begin exploring the park with Mau Mau. When the other demon girls arrive, the gang play kickball, red light, green light, and build various sandcastles. As the sun begins to set, they choose to go on an evening walk, all happy to hear that Mau Mau enjoyed her time together, all agreeing to play more in the future. That night, Kanaj hears that Mau Mau was able to get the Royal Empire's security password, but Mau admits he doesn't know what the password is as he was too busy watching the recordings of his daughter enjoy her time in the park. Elsewhere, we enter an abandoned school where a smug-looking creature declares they'll finally get their revenge on the princess. Following Heim, we see torture has gathered her near a river, but Heim says she can hold back her urge to splash in the river. Torture reassures Heim that the river has nothing to do with the torture, and instead, they'll be preparing marshmallows to tempt Heim. But Heim says she doesn't care for marshmallows. Torture corrects Heim as they'll be roasting marshmallows in the open to be safe, but Heim still is skeptical, patiently watching as Torture places a skewered marshmallow over a fire. Seeing the edges of the marshmallow begin to crisp, Heim slowly grows more intrigued. Plus, Torture offers to teach Heim how to roast one if she would like. X reminds Heim that she is a princess and shouldn't succumb to such basic things. But Torture's tactics are too persuasive, ultimately prompting Heim to stuff the roasted marshmallow into her mouth, immediately being flung into a dreamy marshmallow-filled world. Heim adores the marshmallow's crispy outer layer and gooey innards, ultimately forcing Heim to give up more secrets in exchange for an unlimited supply of marshmallows. Heim chooses to start roasting a jumbo marshmallow, indulging in the sweet treat only for Heim to begin playing in the river, all whilst Torture reports that castle guards are weak to fire attacks. Kanaj utters that such a secret is nothing new, especially since all beings are weak to fire, so Torture agrees to extract another secret as per the Demon King's orders. As Torture hangs up, she fears Heim may crumble after being tortured twice in one day. But seeing Torture's worried demeanor, Heim wonders why Torture is sad all of a sudden. X utters that they secretly listened in on her call, and Torture is upset that she must defile Heim twice in one day. Shocking Heim as Torture seems to care for her. X orders Heim to not hand over secrets to Torture out of pity for her, but at the same time Torture feels horrible for needing to torture Heim twice in one day, questioning if she is really fit to be an inquisitor in the first place. With Torture lost in thought, Hime chooses to join Torture by the river, starting up some small talk only to reveal that the king loves wearing briefs. Torture scolds Hime for willingly giving out such valuable information, but Hime plays dumb, uttering that it was a slip of the tongue, plus Torture seems less sad now. Now, with a free day ahead of them, Hime asks Torture to play with her only for our gang to spot Yuki and Inky joining them. The gang start by fishing and enjoying some roasted fish, only to move on to some pebble skipping, and when Torture's hat flies away, Hime is the first to retrieve it, accidentally all getting wet as they play in the river. As the sun begins to set, we see Hime, Anki, and Yuki all asleep in the back of Torture's car, all heading back to the castle. With Torture reporting her intel to the Demon King, we see Hime has gotten quite tan, advised by Giant to skip the hot spring and enjoy the sauna instead. Seeing as Hime has never experienced a sauna before, Giant offered to show her the ropes, but as time goes by, Hime grows more agitated. Hime wonders why sweating in hot temperatures could be relaxing, confused to see Giant enjoying her time in the sauna, but Hime's competitive nature refuses to allow her to give up. Hime says she has endured harsh temperatures and freezing cold winds before, and it's due to her being locked up and fed 3 meals a day that she hasn't faced any adversity for a while. Out of nowhere, Hime finally realizes why the sauna is so good, as it takes effort to stay in the sauna and sweat. But at that moment, Giant declares they'll leave for now as staying too long in the sauna is bad for them. Upon exiting the sauna, Hime is hit with a nice breeze, only for Giant to ask Hime to enter a cold bath with her. Hesitant at first, Hime trusts Giant, plunging the entirety of her body into the freezing water only to slowly loosen up and enjoy the bath. Having completely adapted to the cold temperature, our duo chose to relax on some chairs, prompting Hime to thank Giant for the amazing detox they went through. As our duo wrap up their sauna trip with some milk, we cut to later that night, where Hime is brought before an abandoned school where Torture shows off a horde of demons. Hime recognizes Mad Kaiser, a demon she had fought in the past amongst the crowd, but strangely he is back after being cut in two when they last fought in the Western Tower. Kaiser declares that he still has a scar from when Hime cut him in the past, making Hime wonder if the demons gathered are all beings she fought in the past, but Torture says they were all randomly selected by Yuki. Torture says that Hime will be tasked with venturing through the abandoned school and testing her courage, all whilst the gathered demons try to scare her, something Hime admits is quite horrible. As Kaiser and the other demons don goofy disguises, they rush into the abandoned school, all whilst Hime hears Yuki has caught a cold and can't make it today. Hime begs to go check on Yuki, but Torture reminds Hime she needs to confess first, and without thinking twice, Hime cries there is a hidden passage that leads into the castle in the Eastern Mountains. Wrapping things up, the girls head over to visit Yuki, all relieved to see she's doing fine, plus Hime compliments Yuki's torture idea. With Yuki's fever going down, the girls feed Yuki some porridge, all sharing laughs as they look after Yuki. Before Torture heads to bed, she remembers to report her secret passage Hime told her about. But Torture suddenly remembers she forgot to tell the demons gathered at the abandoned school that things have been canceled. In the coming days, we see Mao congratulating his daughter for obtaining the title of Cadet Inquisitor, only to grant Mao any wish she would like. Mao hesitantly asks if she could get a piggyback ride, a request Mao happily fulfills as he begins rocking Mao back and forth on his shoulder while she holds tight onto Mao's horns. With the reward fulfilled, Mao admits it's good to let loose every once in a while, and seeing as Mao is in a good mood, Mao asks to spend more time with her father. With the duo playing several role-playing games, Mao makes sure to play along to ensure Mao has a good time, and when Mao asks if they can go outside, Mao gladly obliges. The father and daughter pair continue their adventure with some badminton, spicing things up by blowing bubbles only to try out a variation of sports, ending the day by resting underneath a tree. That evening, Mao carries a sleepy Mao home, even asking Kanaj to keep it down as he lays Mao in her room. Mao is grateful that his daughter cares so much for him. But as Mao leaves, we see one of the papers Mao had scribbled on contains the password Mao had extracted from Hime. Back with Hime, we see her and X passing time with some word games, something Hime takes pride in, But out of nowhere, the lights in her room are blown out, only for Torture to enter her cell. Torture chooses to unveil a hot piping rod, freaking out Hime as she fears she'll be tortured for real this time. But X reminds Hime that she's slain fiery entities before. Luckily, Torture shows off a massive block of cheese, revealing that Hime will be tempted with some melted cheese, something that Hime says is better than being seared. As Torture runs the hot iron along the block of cheese, Hime begins to drool, seeing the cheese harden and ooze, and to top things off, Torture scrapes off the melted cheese onto some meat and vegetables. Without letting the cheese settle, Hime confesses a secret, only to be handed a cheese-covered sausages that snaps back with every bite. Torture is disappointed that the secret Hime gave her wasn't good enough for Mao, and seeing as there will be something different tomorrow, we cut to the next day, where Torture announces they'll be doing their routine physical on Hime. Hime learns that it's already been a month since she was captured, and the demons plan to keep Hime in a healthy shape, so they'll be running a physical examination every month, and this will replace the normal daily torture. Torture reassures Hime that everyone undergoes a physical, even Datarma, her assistant. But when Torture asks to extract some of Hime's blood, Hime offers to confess instead. X realizes that Hime is afraid of needles. Strange, since Hime would receive countless wounds during her time on the battlefield, but Hime says a needle is pain-induced, purposely unlike battle, where wounds occur randomly. Torture utters that she used to be a nurse, so the procedure should be quick, but Hime desperately begs for an alternative solution, hearing that Torture will use an anesthetic patch to suppress the pain. With Hime telling Torture the royal treasures are hidden in a room on the east side of the castle. Torture asks Hime to place her arm out, and whilst Hime squirms out of fear, Torture finishes the blood extraction before Hime can notice. With X also undergoing inspection, we cut outside to see Louch has returned to rescue Hime, even managing to sneak into Hime's cell only to promise to help Hime escape this time. With the guards asleep, Louch says the new spell he learnt won't require physical contact, but the drawback is that Hime's clothes will need to be teleported first before her body. As Louch begins to chant, Hime slowly freaks out, seeing as her clothes are disintegrating before her eyes. Hime reminds herself that she's faced much harder battles in her life. Plus, Louch seems too focused casting a spell to see her naked, but Hime demands to know where they'll be teleported to. With Louch's and Hime's clothes slowly disappearing, Louch's focus reminds Hime of a shogi master, but seeing as she still has her pride to keep Hime, does the right thing and equips her blade, instantly cutting down Louch as he teleports himself away. The next day, Torture gladly hands Hime a change of clothes, curious as to what happened last night. But as we follow Mao, we see his power rupture the heavens as he seems to be preparing for Mao Mao's field day in 1 week's time. Back with Hime, we see her enjoying her time snuggling with Snowball and Callie, both Crawl's companions. And to make things worse, Crawl declares today's torture will involve the cats. Hime doubts that such adorable creatures can make her snap, but Crawl smirks, declaring that Callie loves cuddling with people, while Snowball loves sleeping on people's laps. Right on cue, Hime begins to act strange. Something Crawl knows is due to Hime's legs falling asleep, having been kneeling for too long. When X asks Hime to simply stretch her legs, Hime cries that she doesn't want Snowball to wake up, but Crawl offers to delicately move Snowball in exchange for some intel. Hime curses at Crawl's cruel torture, declaring that she's endured many battles with multiple wounds. Therefore, Hime says some numb legs won't break her. Sadly, Crawl reminds Hime of Callie's existence, all watching as Callie begins snuggling with Hime's numb legs, a deadly combination that makes Hime talk. With the torture over, Hime ends up forgiving Callie, only to receive permission from Crawl to feed Callie, all while Snowball plays with X. Torture tries reporting the secret she learned today, but Kanaj says Mao is out preparing for Mao Mao's field day, and he has been waiting in line for the event. Torture reasons she should show her support as well, cutting to the day of the event where we see everyone gather ready to have some fun. At the main desk, we see the announcer cheering on the second-year class march, something Hime finds adorable. Hime suddenly notices Mao and her third-year class, excitedly cheering her on, all whilst Mao fumbles with his camera to capture the moment. Inky is surprised her little brother Insuk is lined up next to Mao for the upcoming race. and with a gun sounding at the start of the race, we see In-suk and Mao Mao neck and neck. As the crowd cheers on the runners, Mao Mao is seen overtaking In-suk, but sadly the race finishes with In-suk barely claiming first. With everyone satisfied, they move on to several other games, including a basket game, several relay races along with a wheelbarrow race. Whilst Torture and the other girls head to help prepare for the afternoon events, Haim is left to adore the children trying their hardest, but X utters that the upcoming event will involve the children's parents. Spotting Mao Mao from afar, Haim realizes that the demon lord is her father, terrified to see he has a dark presence. As the parent and child event starts, we see Mao dominate the competition in the sack racing event, something that makes Haim question if Mao truly is as evil as he seems. Wrapping up the race, Mao reveals that he has special plans for Haim this afternoon, uttering that they'll be dueling each other to settle matters once and for all. With lunchtime arriving, the gang unpacks some lunch boxes Torture had specially made for the gang, which earns Torture some praise. Haim fears she'll be tortured soon, but Torture reminds Haim that they don't do such things on the weekends, exciting Haim as she takes a massive bite of fried chicken. As the gang devour the rice balls and octopus-shaped sausages, Haim notices Mao Mao enjoying a picnic with her parents. Wrapping up lunch, we see Crawl arriving just before the afternoon events start. And to kick things off, the announcer declares the third years will partake in a borrowing race. Mao says Haim and himself will duel during this borrowing race, an event where students are tasked with borrowing items from the crowd, and Mao had rigged Mao Mao's question to ask who Mao Mao loves more. With Mao confident that Mao Mao will pick him over Haim, we hear a gun signaling the start of the event, only for the kids to rush towards their tasks. Haim gets excited, wondering if Mao Mao will pick her as the person she loves the most. But surprisingly, Mao Mao heads over to retrieve her mother, Queen Lillian. Mao is clearly distraught, beginning to make up excuses for why Mao Mao picked Lillian over himself. But as the children collect their borrowed items, they all rush towards the finish line. With it being a close call, Mao Mao is ultimately deemed the first-place winner, and seeing as the festival is wrapping up, everyone is called to join in on the school's march. As various children dance and celebrate a successful event with their parents and loved ones, we cut to later that evening, where Mao is tasked with giving his closing remarks on the event. Mao says he is proud to see the children grow and work hard at such an event, even choosing to reward everyone with medals, something that excites the crowd. Before Haim and the others pack up for the day, they notice Mao Mao running over to thank them for coming today, and most surprisingly of all, Lillian appears to thank the gang as well, someone that captivates Haim with her beauty. Just like that, the gang part ways, only to cut to later that night where Lillian and Mao are seen putting Mao Mao to bed, both grateful to see Mao Mao fast asleep after an eventful day. Flashing back, we see a younger Inky and Yuki discussing jobs they may pursue in the future, only for Inky to utter that she wants to be a torturer for the Hell Horde. Inky doesn't want to pressure Yuki into joining her, but without hesitating, Yuki says she'll join Inky, cutting to the present day where the girls are taking a promotional exam. Although the girls try their hardest to impress Mao with their play fighting, Mao fails them, prompting the girls to complain to Haim about how they failed their most recent promotion exam. Haim learns that the girls want the title of Harm Marshal, and they need to torture Mao and make him reveal a secret, are more difficult task than a written and practical exam to obtain the Lutorment title. Haim suggests the girls figure out the opponent's weakness, remembering a time when Haim herself had to take on armored foe, but by targeting the monster's weak points, she was able to take down the enemy. Inspired, Inky and Yuki return to Mao's throne room, only to begin their torture, but Mao is clearly not impressed by the same play fighting prior. Interestingly enough, the girls call for Mao Mao to join in, something that catches Mao off guard, as he can't help but confess. With Mao now able to join the girls and play together, we see Haim and Giant finishing up one of their spa sessions, surprising Giant to hear Haim has her own shower next to her cell. Seeing as Haim is done with her torture for the day, our duo begin their trek to the corner store to pick up some ice cream, something that excites Giant as she loves the cold wind brushing past them in the dead of night. Haim says at home, she always had people following her around and all of her movements and routes were predetermined every day. Hearing such a constricting upbringing, Giant suggests they take a detour, exciting Hime as she wonders what mysteries will await them. Passing by some shrubs, old fencing, and a small lake, Giant praises the gorgeous night sky, only to point out various constellations that ultimately form the Winter Triangle. Hime and Giant begin to name the stars in the sky after the people they know, both giggling as Hime seems to be grateful for the adventure Giant has taken her on, and to top things off, they spot shooting stars fly by. With both girls making a wish, they finally arrive at the corner store, picking up some meat buns, seeing as they build up an appetite from all the walking. Elsewhere, we see a crimson moon hovering over a scary-looking castle. But as we head inside, we see a girl receiving word of Inki and Yuki's promotion to harem marshals. With this mysterious girl excited to join in on the fun, she appears in Hime's cell the next day, introducing herself as the harem marshal Vanilla Pashoots. X immediately realizes Vanilla belongs to the prestigious Pashoots vampire family, a clan notorious for their despicable deeds, and Vanilla herself is the daughter of the household. Vanilla mentions how the torture Hime has felled up until now has been nothing, advising that Hime prepare herself as we cut over to an amusement park with a massive roller coaster. Vanilla declares that her torture involves a roller coaster that stands 75 meters tall and accelerates to 175 kilometers per hour, a ride most people fear. Vanilla says she won't make Hime ride it if she spills a secret, but Hime instead looks excited to ride the roller coaster. And to make things worse, Torture asks that Vanilla accompany Hime in case she confesses midway. Although Vanilla is scared, Torture manages to convince her otherwise by teasing her, cutting to a few minutes later where the girls are strapped in and headed to the peak of the ride. Vanilla asks that Hime confess now so they can perform an emergency stop, but Hime is too excited to let the fun stop now, leaving Vanilla to squirm as she is forced to endure her own torture. With the roller coaster soaring from its peak to its trough, it begins to ascend to its next peak, but when Hime checks on Vanilla, Vanilla confesses that she can't sleep without a stuffed toy. Hime hears that Vanilla is deathly afraid of riding roller coasters, beginning to break down as she fears she has tarnished her vampire bloodline. But Hime says it's very admirable that Vanilla is facing one of her fears head-on. To help Vanilla out, Hime offers to hold Vanilla's hand, promising to never let go. As the roller coaster reaches the peak, it accelerates even faster than before across its tracks. But Vanilla says she doesn't feel as scared as before, wondering if it's thanks to Hime being by her side. With the ride ending, Hime is seen satisfied, but Torture reminds Vanilla that she must reveal a secret since she failed to make Hime confess. When Vanilla asks what Hime would like to know from her, Hime asks what attractions Vanilla wants to ride next, something that excites Vanilla. Later that evening, we see Vanilla scrolling through the pictures she captured during the day, stopping on one in particular as she becomes flustered thinking about spending more time with Hime, especially since she wants to redeem herself. Following Hime, she is seen relaxing in her cell, having just heard that Torture is away on a business trip. Cutting over to Torture, she is seen slumping into bed, exhausted from her travels. Before Torture can knock out, she suddenly remembers that she hasn't had dinner, springing out of bed only to ready some convenience store food. Starting with a ham and cheese burrito, Torture combines the wrap with a sausage, scoffing down the meal as each bite feels electrifying. In the meantime, Torture prepares her udon, only to begin slurping up the meal, occasionally sipping on the broth. Wrapping up dinner, Torture heads to bed, waking up bright and early the next day for the hotel's breakfast buffet. Torture reasons she should eat some vegetables, but ends up stuffing herself with some freshly baked bread. On Sunday, we follow Bruise the Destroyer, horrified to hear that Mao had been injured, curious as to who could have penetrated Mao's brilliant defense. As we flash back one day earlier, we see Luliyun and Mao Mao prepare to bake some cookies, but straight away Mao is seen praising Mao Mao for being so adorable. First off, Luliyun and Mao Mao add some frozen butter to a bowl, but when Luliyun says they have to wait for the butter to melt, Mao Mao gets impatient. Stepping in to help, Mao melts the butter with his purgatorial flames, allowing the girls to begin adding the powdered mix and eggs. Mao Mao is sad since she doesn't know how to break an egg, but Lillian takes the chance to show off her skills, breaking an egg with a single hand. Mixing up their mixture and rolling the batter out, the family are seen shaping various cookie designs. But Mao is impressed seeing Mao striving to make the biggest cookie in the world. After a few minutes, the steaming hot cookies are ready, exciting Mao, but Lillian pulls the hot tray away from Mao, accidentally slipping during the process. Luckily, Mao manages to catch the tray and stop Lillian from falling, flustering Lillian, but she cries Mao is holding a piping hot tray. Mao could care less about his burns, instead taking the chance to teach Mao to be patient, only to have his hand wrapped alongside a cold pack. Seeing as the cookies are done, the family savor their hard work, and comically the burn is the reason Mao was injured. With a few days passing, Torture is back, but before she begins her session, she hands him a bag of cookies Mao had made. The girls agree to savor the cookies once the torture is over, prompting Torture to unveil a box of tea leaves, having heard that Hime is quite fond of hosting tea parties. Hime reveals that once a year, she would get to enjoy a tea party with other girls, but what Hime loved more than tea parties were sugary carbonated beverages, having always been rewarded with a soda by Jamochi after a long day. In the present, Hime watches as Torture delicately warms up some teapots, praising Torture for following proper etiquette, but X cries for Hime to focus. Hime realizes she can snack on Mao's cookies to keep her distracted, but after a few bites, Hime starts yearning for a hot beverage to flush down the dry cookies. Hime realizes Torture had planned this from the very start, and seeing as Hime can relive the fond moments she used to have her tea parties, Hime spills some secrets only to begin indulging in the warm tea Torture brewed. Later that day, we see Kanaj report a mysterious treasure buried in the royal cemetery. But even Mao wouldn't be so cruel as to defile a cemetery to uncover some treasure. The next day, Vanilla has returned to torture Hime, but Vanilla gets excited seeing as Hime still remembers who she is. Vanilla cries she'll make Hime break today, only to reveal a cake specially made by Vanilla herself, having slaved away to ensure it tasted amazing, all whilst her parents supervised her. Vanilla believes Hime will beg to taste her cake, but X calls out the cake for being sloppily put together. Plus, it has strange toppings, annoying Vanilla as she believes Hime is playing hard to get. Sadly, within a few seconds, Vanilla begins to doubt her own skills, slowly despairing at her poorly created cake, but Hime speaks up, correcting X. Hime says she can see the person who created the cake clearly took their time to apply the icing. Plus, Hime recognizes the decorations on the cake to resemble a penguin, the exact intentions Vanilla had in mind. Before Hime can prepare for Vanilla's torture, Vanilla is seen bawling her eyes out, shocking Hime when she hears Vanilla doesn't want to torture her anymore. Sitting down to taste Vanilla's creation, Hime cries that the cake is delicious, words that fill Vanilla with joy. Having heard of Vanilla failing 2 tortures, Kanaj suggests they investigate the reason for Vanilla's sloppy attempts. But as we follow Mao home, he is seen cleaning the dishes all whilst Lillian puts Mao to bed. Sitting for an evening drink, Mao asks Lillian if he can accompany Mao to the parent-child luncheon, an event where a single parent is invited to have lunch with their child. Lillian is more than happy to let Mao go, cutting to the day of the event where Mao watches his daughter eat a vegetable she hates to impress him, making Mao the proudest father in that moment. On a bright and sunny day, we see Torture gather the girls for a beach torture, and they'll have a sword fight where the goal is to pop the balloons on the opponent's head. Torture says Hime will be facing Yuki and Inky. Plus, if she loses, she must confess a secret. Hime asks what she'll get if she wins, but Yuki and Inky reveal they've been sword-fighting champions for 2 years in a row, so Torture will grant any wish Hime desires if she succeeds, even setting her free. With both parties now ready, Torture starts the event, prompting Inky and Yuki to dash towards Hime. But before the girls can circle Hime, Hime intercepts Inky only to pop her balloon. Hime reveals that she had been taught sword fighting since a very young age. Plus, Jamochi would often spice things up with funny, quirky challenges, most of which he won, of course. With Hime proudly marching towards Yuki, Yuki reminds Hime that there are no rules to their bout, even going as far to unveil a massive water gun to ensure her victory. As the massive weapon spins up, Yuki fires several projectiles at Hime, but Heim nonchalantly deflects every single blow, simply waiting until Yuki runs out of ammo. Torture realizes they've underestimated Heim, racking her brain for a solution, as her personalities egg Torture on to join the battle. As Yuki swings mindlessly at Heim is seen dancing around and toying with Yuki, only to bind her wrist preparing to end their duel. At that moment, Torture returns with all the friends Heim had met, declaring they'll all be taking Heim on. Heim gladly faces the challenges head-on, slowly dismantling and evading each successive strike. But as their battle draws on, the gang soon forget about their duel as they end up embracing the summer vibes. With everyone having fun, we see Heim willingly return to her cell, having managed to keep her balloon from being popped, but outside the castle we see Louch has returned once more. In the blink of an eye, Mao teleports behind Louch, demanding to know why Louch is here, but Louch quickly backs away, having been unable to detect Mao. Sensing Mao's immense aura, Louch makes the first move, enhancing his blade only to slash at Mao, but his blade fails to breach Mao's defenses. Trying again, Louch ignites his blade with lightning magic only to carve away at Mao. But Mao is unfazed, mentioning how he merely stumbled on a Louch having just come back from an event. Leaping back once more, Louch refuses to believe a demon would be so passive, choosing to unleash his ultimate move as he blasts the demon with the light from his blade. With a massive impact rupturing throughout the surrounding area, Louch is horrified to see Mao unscathed, and sadly, due to his power, the footing from the ground below him begins to crumble. As Louch helplessly falls into the abyss below, Mao chooses to soften his fall, saving Louch as he recognizes the emblem around Louch's neck. Mao says the emblem is from the anime he loves, something that sparks a bond between the anime lovers, ultimately making Louch apologize for attacking Mao out of nowhere. Louch reasons he shouldn't go around attacking random demons, choosing to depart for now, but he doesn't realize he just survived an encounter with the Demon King himself. With the men promising to chat more someday, we cut to Vanilla, who plays a card game all by herself, but she wonders how fun it'll be to play with others. Vanilla scolds herself for thinking that way, but admits that her parents still want her to grow up as a normal child and not be burdened by their family name. Seeing as she can use Heim as a test subject, we see Vanilla starting her torture with Heim, declaring that if Heim confesses they can play card games together. Heim is reminded of the times when she would play cards with Jamochi, but in her past, Jamochi would constantly dominate her every time they played. Heim apologizes since she won't be revealing any secrets, but this upsets Vanilla, making Heim ask if Vanilla just wants to play with her. Flustered, Vanilla goes on the defensive, accidentally crying that she wants to play all sorts of card games with friends. Hearing Vanilla refuse to make friends due to her higher status, Heim chooses to reveal a secret, telling Vanilla that she also believed she didn't need friends, especially since she was forced to put down a close friend of hers. But in reality, Heim knows everyone needs friends. Touched by Heim's knowledge, Vanilla cries she wants friends as well, prompting Heim to offer to play Old Maiden with her. Immediately, we see Heim employing mind games to confuse Vanilla, both spending the rest of night playing card games. Following torture, we see her finishing up work only to head out for an early dinner, completely overjoyed when she is served her chicken and egg bowl, savoring every creamy bite only to head home for the night. The next day, we see Crawl applying her torture, but Heim wonders what Snow, Crawl's dog, could possibly do to her. Crawl chooses to unveil a ball, handing it to Heim only to ask her to toss the ball around the room, something that surprisingly catches Snow's attention. With every toss, Snow heads to retrieve the ball, something that makes Heim adore the puppy. Heim realizes she is slowly growing attached to Snow, reminded of her past where she was ordered to distance herself with her horse companions. So Heim declares she'll do the same with Snow. Crawl calls Heim's bluff, asking Heim to look at Snow, as the small pup clearly wants to keep playing. Heim slowly begins falling for Snow's adorable eyes, but although X asks Heim to stay strong, Snow begins begging for some belly rubs. Heim admits that in the past, most of her companions were adorable as well. So as Heim breaks her tough girl act, she begins adoring and indulging Snow's cuteness with some belly rubs, promising to draw out a map of the kingdom's hidden passageways as her confession. With Mao receiving the map, he says they can use it to infiltrate the kingdom, ordering for Dark Ninja Geku to appear. When Geku makes himself known, Kanaj regretfully informs Mao that Geku plans to retire soon, having always dreamed of creating picture books since he was young. As Mao glares at Geku, Geku tries retracting his statement, but Mao reassures Geku it's fine as he sets Geku free to pursue his dreams. Back with Hime, we see her dreaming up a storm, having imagined various fluffy animals dancing alongside her only to be handed a donut. When Hime looks around, she spots a Jiamochi bobblehead, Torture and Dharma glitched into a wall, plus some pudding has appeared before her. As Hime wishes to never leave her dream, we see Hime is sleeping in the real world, annoying Torture as Hime still needs to undergo her torture for the day. Before Torture can wake her up, Hime begins spouting out several secrets without being prompted. But in Hime's dream, she is seen exchanging secrets for delicious food. X cries for Hime to stop, but Hime reveals that X was the reason she felt so secure growing up, something that melts X's and Torture's hearts as they reason they should leave Hime be. As Hime sleeps through her magnificent dream, we cut to some researchers experimenting with some potions, but having made a mistake, a massive explosion rings throughout the demon castle. It's revealed that the explosion had turned the demons present into children. So as we cut to the next day, we follow a miniature Torture prepare to torture Hime. Torture admits that Mao had given her time off due to their mini bodies, but Torture says she still wants to try, heading over to her iron casket only to retrieve some sugar candy. Hime feels awkward since such a lame snack wouldn't work on her, but seeing Torture adorably nibble on the candy, Hime can't help but give in, seeing how cute Torture is. Up next, Torture shows off some candies attached to a string, asking Hime to pick a string and tug on it, surprising Torture when Hime picked the biggest candy. Seeing Torture so enthusiastic, Hime gives Torture her prize, watching as the adorable Torture savors the candy. Without thinking twice, Hime says the kingdom employs a secret order of knights known as Zero Legion, exciting Torture as she managed to extract a secret. With Kanaj reporting the secret to a miniature Mao, we see X recommending Hime escape, now since the demons have been handicapped, but suddenly Yuki and Inky appear asking to play with Hime. To make things worse, Giant and Crawl appear, checking out the situation, only for Hime to spot Vanilla peeping in on their conversation. With Hime agreeing to play with everyone, we see that within a day, Torture is slowly reverting back to her usual self. When Torture shows off a meat and potato stew as Hime's torture today, she quickly retracts her torture, feeling embarrassed since most of her cooking skills had been reverted when she became younger. Hime realizes Torture had received quite a lot of wounds whilst creating the stew, and seeing as Torture feels guilty for not making a more impressive dish, Hime orders Torture to be more confident in herself. As Hime sits down, she gets a good bite of the stew, declaring that the meal is delicious, something Torture appreciates very much. With Hime confessing once more, we see Mao slowly reclaiming his former glory, impressing Kanaj as Mao's power is rising by the second. With another day passing, we see Torture has reverted back to her normal form, declaring that today's torture will entail pizza, one of Hime's favorite foods. Hime prays that the chosen pizza will be something she hates, but Torture outsmarts Hime, taking out a menu only to offer to buy any pizza Hime likes if she confesses a secret. Hime declares she'll keep quiet since she can't merely pick one pizza, but Torture shows Hime variations of pizzas that can house 2 or 4 different toppings, something that makes Hime give in, getting a whole pizza to herself. Hime had chose to tell Torture the location in which the Emperor uses to meditate, but at the same time we see Geku report some good news. Mao is amazed Geku won the newbie award for one of his picture books, taking the chance to congratulate Geku on his accomplishment, something that makes Geku blush, grateful for the praise. At night, we see Vanilla excited to have Hime as her first friend, but she wonders how she can invite Hime to play with her at her home. Vanilla blames herself for being so shy, but having built up her resolve, Vanilla declares she'll make the first move. Back with Hime, She is seen enjoying a video of her younger self and Jamochi ice skating, and coincidentally, this gives Vanilla a plan for their next hangout. It's quite well known that the House of Pashoots are descendants of Melark Pashoots and are closely acquainted with the first Demon Lord, with the current head being Aliato Pashoots. Aliato is seen barging into the room with his wife, Extract Pashoots, demanding that they book out the entirety of an ice skating rink so their daughter, Vanilla, can have fun. Apparently, Vanilla had personally asked Aliato to help book the event for her, and when Aliato and Extract had her Vanilla made her first friend, they both became frenzied at the thought of giving Vanilla the perfect day. That evening, Vanilla is seen sifting through various dresses, but after some contemplation, Vanilla settles on a special dress she had been saving. With the big day arriving, Hime is amazed at the massive rink Vanilla managed to book out, surprising Hime as Vanilla's parents actually own the rink. Vanilla gets shy asking if Hime can skate with her, but Hime suddenly misinterprets the kind gesture as a punishment, agreeing to hold out and watch Vanilla skate. Although Vanilla is sad, she dons her ice skating shoes only to ascend onto the icy floor, but Vanilla realizes she doesn't know how to skate. With Vanilla still thinking about skating with Hime, she accidentally slips, helplessly blaming herself for not planning more ahead. In the blink of an eye, Hime heroically dashes to Vanilla's side, something that breaks Vanilla's heart as Hime has once again saved her. Vanilla tries telling Hime the ice skating wasn't a torture, but chickens out, leading Hime to help Vanilla out by telling her the Imperial secret to improve in ice skating. With X enjoying their time skating, we see Hime guiding Vanilla through the basics of ice skating, something Vanilla appreciates dearly. The next day, we see Torture arrive to start her torture, but immediately Torture detects something off with Hime. Upon taking a temperature check, Torture confirms that Hime has a fever, suggesting they call off today's session. Hime refuses at first, but upon being tucked in alongside X, Hime admits she had to endure harsh sleeping conditions during her time traveling. With Hime asking for a light udon meal, she is pleasantly surprised when Torture serves her a bowl, slurping the udon down only to receive a pudding from Torture. Having taken her medicine, Hime heads to bed, all whilst Torture looks after her, happy to see Hime is recovering well. With Mao receiving word of Hime's sickness, he admits he feels bad for Hime, but within a single day, we see Hime has fully recovered. When Torture appears to administer her torture, Hime immediately detects something strange about Torture's demeanor, hearing that people are being moved around tomorrow. Torture regretfully informs Hime that it may be their last time together. Plus, the people Hime met may be transferred around as well, something that happens rarely amongst the Hell Horde. Seeing as the results will be announced tomorrow, Torture wonders if she should lighten up the mood, but Hime declares she'll stand strong today to honor their time together. Happy to see Hime in high spirits, we see Torture call forth all the demons Hime had ever met, all taking turns to treasure the remaining time they have together. As tomorrow arrives, we see various demons gathered to see their transfer results. But amongst the crowd, we see Torture checking out her results. With Torture excited about the results, we see Hime arrive to congratulate Torture, happy they'll be together for the foreseeable future. Plus, it seems the others have kept their positions as well. With the gorgeous sun rising on a new day, we suddenly cut to Hime and X waking up in a strange-looking bed, suddenly frightened awake by Mao, who is beside them. Mao reveals that they've been summoned to another world, having both been struck by a mysterious light, and it seems they can only return home once they save the world they're in. Mao reports that their current world is governed by a menacing entity known as the Black Monarch, and in order to reach said monarch, they must ascend a tower and vanquish the 4 horsemen guarding the tower. Luckily, Mao had already slaughtered the 4 horsemen whilst he was surveying the land, having run an Agaryu with a darkness level of 15, whilst Mao had a level of 100. When a remainder of the monarch's minions had come to confront Mao, Mao easily dismantled them as well, leaving only the Black Monarch left. The monarch was quite confident in his abilities, willingly revealing that only the dragon sword can harm him, and when Mao tried attacking the monarch, none of Mao's strikes left a scratch. More confident than ever, the monarch had equipped a purgatory blade, swiftly rushing Mao to eliminate him. But Mao had easily stopped the monarch's blade. Seeing as Mao's sword wouldn't work, Mao simply began pummeling and beating the monarch into the ground, ultimately defeating the monarch with his sheer strength. The season ends with the townsfolk thanking Mao for their act of kindness with ridding their world of the tyrannical monarch, only for us to cut over to Hime and Mao, who have returned to their own world, both greeted by their friends and family who have been looking for them.